Hey, Winter.
What, Lee?
What is white, has a horn, and gives milk?
What?
A dairy truck.
Just got it.
Ta-da!
Hungry Squared, bringing you the best food talk anywhere.
Welcome to Hungry Squared Podcast, where the brain and belly meet. Hi, I'm Lee Red. I'm married to Winter. I am not Sharon.
And I'm Winter from theredparty.com. This week we have kind of a special guest, Lee Red.
Hey.
And we're actually talking about knives today. Yay!
I'm not a cutter, but I am a chef.
Yes. Let's talk about it. Lee, this is weird.
Yeah. A very little weirdness.
Yeah, this is weird, everybody. So Lee, my husband, editor of the pod, as well as my husband and chef, he is on the show this week with us. Yay! I'm kind of excited about that.
Well, thanks for having me over to my own place.
Yes. Sharon's actually had some work things come up, and so we decided to have Lee on because he's a little bit of a pro at some stuff. So
No, I'm more of a goof than a pro, but what do you do?
Anyway, so Lee, what did you eat this week?
So I pretty much ate everything that you ate this week. But yesterday we had a neighborhood Dutch oven cookout, and we made the char siu pork, but this time we did something different. So we slow cooked it, we broiled it in the oven
With that yummy glaze.
Yeah, with the yummy glaze, and then we shredded it and poured more glaze on it. So it was shredded char siu.
It was delicious.
Yeah, I like the steak how we normally do it, but I thought this was really good too.
So if you don't remember, we did talk about this one time because I brought this up. It's one of those America's Test Kitchen recipes, and Lee, that's the one that he's talking about. So delicious.
Yeah, char siu, the Chinese barbecued pork.
Yeah, I thought it was really good, and we put it down. You put it down on the table.
At the gathering, yeah.
And we didn't get any. By the time we got there, we didn't get any because it was gone.
No, it could also be that we have a bunch of people in the neighborhood who just eat a lot of food.
That's true, but it was really good.
I doubt that.
I mean, we have good-looking, slim neighbors, it seems like.
Yeah, don't look at me. I'm a fat, hairy cat.
But it was really good. I really enjoyed it, Lee.
Thank you. Winter, what did you eat this week?
Well, like you said, we pretty much ate about the same stuff this week because we're in the same house. However, I did go to work this week and had something at work this week, rather.
What? Kale?
It was a buffalo shrimp wrap thing. It was really good.
Like a lettuce wrap or like a burrito?
It was like a burrito.
Okay, gotcha.
But the thing that was a little weird about it, so all of my coworkers were like, oh my gosh, this thing is so good. You have to go get it. It's like so good. And so I went upstairs and I was like, so is there a lot of shrimp? Because if they're not going to give me a lot of shrimp, then I don't think it's worth it. I'll just go get something different.
Yeah. 2 shrimp does not equal a burrito wrap.
No way, man, people. So I went up there and I was like, okay, I'm pumped because they said, yes, there's a lot of shrimp. So I went up there. But when I got there, they had this huge bowl full of these kind of rectangular fillet things, Lee, that were like fried.
Okay.
They were crispy and fried things. And I'm like, that can't be it. Those guys talked about shrimp.
Yeah. I've never seen a rectangle shrimp before.
No, me either. So I'm like, I'm going to order it. I don't know if that belongs to the thing I'm ordering. Sure enough, though, it is. So they had taken shrimp and put it laid it out and then battered it and then froze it. And then they must have fried it here on site and then kind of chopped it up when it was ready to be ordered, when it was ordered. Okay. And then tossed it in the buffalo sauce.
So was it like shredded shrimp?
No.
Pressed together, whole shrimp?
It was like whole shrimps. It was the weirdest thing. I didn't understand it.
But it was good?
It was good, but it was weird. I
blindfold as you eat it, so
well,
you don't.
Yeah, it was just odd. there was like breading on parts of the shrimp because it was the way that little fillet was breaded. It was just weird, but it was good.
Okay.
I can't complain. Well, I don't like blue cheese. I don't like a ton of blue cheese, so I probably could have done a little bit less of that too. So
now, quick question.
Yeah.
I like, what's the cheese called? Never mind. There's blue cheese and there is
Gorgonzola?
Yeah, gorgonzola.
Or feta.
I like gorgonzola more than I like feta.
Okay.
Would this have been good with a feta? It's not as pungent as blue cheese.
I think it probably would have been fine because with that buffalo sauce, yeah, it could have worked.
All right.
I don't think you would have liked it though, Lee. There was celery in it.
Celery sucks. I hate celery.
We're just going to get it out there.
Yeah.
Actually, I think we've talked about it before, Lee. Sorry.
Maybe.
We already talked about
I'm
your
a weirdo.
business.
Raw celery ruins everything it touches. Really, I can't stand it. If it's in a soup and it's cooked, I like it in like chicken noodle soups and as a mirepoix and other soups and stuff. But just raw celery is just awful.
Ew.
Ew. So, Winter loves it.
I do love it.
And I tolerate it for her sake.
Yes. That's true love right there.
I don't know. And now for the main course.
Okay, Lee. Let's get down to our topic at hand. Knives.
Knives.
Yeah. Let's talk about knives. Actually, we thought this would be a great topic because there have been a lot of people ever since our kitchen tools episode have asked us what we think about knives in particular.
All right.
And so we thought you would be a good resource. And plus, you're here.
Well, thank you.
And we appreciate it.
Nobody asks me because I've got a prickly personality.
He's a crotchety old man.
Crotchety old man. Get off my lawn. So
okay, well, Lee, let's break it down then. Let's talk about knives and can you give us like a breakdown of what knives are?
You betcha. So I researched two topics. I researched the anatomy of a knife, which usually goes into different types of knives.
Okay.
Because there's so many different knives, and it's sort of overwhelming to an amateur because you could have, 50 different knives in your kitchen and you'll never use 44 of them. So let's talk about the anatomy. If you imagine holding a knife in your hand, you are holding the handle, and then the metal part that sticks out consists of many parts. So the farthest away from you will be the point. That is the ultra sharp point. All right?
Okay.
The tip of the knife is from the point and then it goes just into the blade. Those are two different parts, the point and the tip.
Oh.
And then
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, a lot of people, the tip is used for like delicate stuff, like slicing tomatoes, slicing grapes, stuff like that.
So is it really sharp there?
Yeah, because you don't use it a whole lot.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. That's true.
Yeah.
I don't.
The most of the blade is called the cutting edge. And that is...
Cutting edge.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
It is a great movie.
I've never seen it.
You should watch it. It's awesome.
Topic.
There you go.
That's right. So the cutting edge, and that's 99% of all that you're going to use.
Right.
And then you have the heel, which is where the cutting edge and pretty much just a little bit of the blade is called the heel. You don't use that too much either, just because it's an awkward movement if you're using the heel. Then you have something called the boister. That's where the blade juts up and joins the handle.
The bolster?
The bolster. Yes, sorry. Bolster. And that, depending on how you're holding your knife, is where you pinch it. You pinch the bolster. And then you have the handle, and the handle consists of the handle, the end, the tang. The tang is a continuation of the metal into the handle. So if you have a full tang, the metal from the blade extends all the way through the handle. There's also like a 3/4 tang where the metal only goes 3/4 into the handle. And then some is like a half tang. The benefit of having a full tang is the blade will always be secure inside the handle.
I was going to say I would think it would also be more balanced too.
It is more balanced.
Okay.
Because the metal goes the whole length. And usually a well-balanced knife is balanced from the blade in the handle. Any questions?
Well, I do have a question about, so when you have a tang that only goes like 3/4 of the way, and that's where so I've seen blades with, you can tell there's metal in there, and then there's like a wooden blade or some sort of other blade, but they have some rivets or something like that.
Yeah, like brass rivets.
Yeah, something that clamps them to the place, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do those have anything to do with it? It's more just to keep everything together. Is that correct?
So if you have a full-length tang, the wooden part is glued to the metal, drilled out, and then like a brass rivet or a metal rivet is glued in. And you could add more weight or take away more weight by using different metals. If you use aluminum as the rivets, you're not creating as much weight. Or if you use like stainless steel, you're adding a little bit more weight.
So you could actually change things out. So if your knife wasn't well balanced or something like that, you could actually change that out. Maybe not necessarily the home consumer, right?
Yeah.
But
if you have a forge and you're making your own custom knives, you can balance a knife easily by adding, instead of 3 rivets, doing 4 rivets, or using aluminum to make it lighter, or using stainless steel to make it heavier.
Okay, I gotcha.
Using a different wood,
Okay, and then I also have seen blades that don't have a handle at all. It seems like there's no tang, and the entire metal, the blade kind of morphs right into the handle.
So,
do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, sort of like the blades that we have at home.
Yes.
The knives that we have at home.
Yes, exactly.
So we have a company called Global. I like them. I really like them. They're beautiful blades. And it's all just one piece. There is no wood. There are no rivets connecting the wood to the handle. It's just a continuation of all the metal. And it's got some divots for grip, but that was about it.
Yeah, it's a good looking, I think it's a really good looking knife.
Yeah, they're nice. They're balanced well. And you could do that by, you could drill out, like core out a little bit in the handle to make it lighter, or extend the handle a little bit bigger.
I don't think it would be necessary though.
Yeah.
I feel like they're really well balanced because they've taken into
yeah.
consideration how much the handle is going to weigh.
Yeah.
So,
but if you, Winter, were making your own blade, you could do that if you needed to.
okay.
Core out a little bit, or add a little bit more in the handle.
Okay. So I have a couple of questions then regarding like the types of blades that are available then, because that's one thing that another question that kind of comes up that we've been asked, both Sharon and I have been asked about, is like, what, if I'm going to buy a blade, what kitchen knife should I have? If I only have X amount of dollars to spend, if I have $100 or something, what kind of knife should I buy? Because there's a ton of different knives and I don't feel like I need them.
Yeah. Like, I personally would recommend, if one person had just enough money for one knife, I would get a chef's knife. They're also called French knives, but chef's knife. If you go into any store and you say, hey, I need a chef's knife, they will know exactly what you're talking about. And that's the stereotypical 7-8 inches, looks like a normal knife. If you're a mass murderer, you'd carry one of those to stab people.
Okay. So can you describe what a chef's knife typically looks like?
So a typical chef's knife, you've got the handle, and coming out of the handle, it comes to a point, and then you've got a nice swooping blade.
Okay. And
Is that good?
yeah. Well, no, so the blade portion, the cutting edge portion is rounded.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's got, it's not a flat blade. It tapers up into a point,
Okay.
and it's a nice sharp point.
Okay. So that's a typical chef's knife. What other knives there's a lot of types of knives.
Yeah. So I personally use my chef's knife for everything I do. If I'm cutting bread, I might use a serrated knife, but it's usually a chef's knife. If I'm cutting meat, if I'm cutting vegetables, if I'm cutting whatever else, if I'm cutting my fingernails, it's a chef knife. No.
You shouldn't be doing that, Lee.
No,
We've got nail clippers.
we do have nail clippers. Another one that people recommend is a utility knife. And a utility knife is anywhere from 4 inches to 7 inches. It's more of a delicate. And the utility knife, the blade part is almost the same width as the handle. Does that make sense? So if you have the handle, the blade comes out and tapers into a point.
Okay.
But it's almost one continual knife.
I'm
Maybe.
not sure what that looks like.
So it's a nice slender knife.
Okay, so it's really thin.
It's not really thin. It's a slender knife.
Okay.
All right. And those are used for filleting chicken. It's a more delicate knife than a chef's knife. It's work you could do with a chef's knife, but because it's smaller, you have more control. Yeah.
More control, smaller. Okay.
All right. Now we're getting into delicate knives. There's 3 knives I really want to talk about in the delicate category. There's a paring knife, something called a sheep's foot knife, and a tournée knife.
Oh, okay.
Paring knives are anywhere between the size of your thumb to just a little bit bigger than your thumb. And those are for the intricate workings if you're making
a radish roses
and making palm leaves out of apple. You'll use a paring knife, and those are for delicate artwork. A sheep's foot knife.
I've never heard of that before, by the way.
It's a very specific blade.
Okay. What does that look like?
It's a flat blade. There's no taper to the cutting edge. And the top, the dull side, tapers down into the blade instead of the blade tapering up into the dull side. And those are used for precision vegetable cutting, like if you need to julienne carrots, because the blade is completely flat. One slice and it's through and cut all the way through.
So that is the entire blade is flat.
Yeah.
Okay. And
So-
that's a sheep's foot.
A sheep's foot.
Okay. I don't think I've seen that before. But it kind of looks like a sheep's foot, right?
Yeah.
If you think about it.
Yeah, hooves.
You should have seen Lee just do little, his hands are in the, you missed it. Sorry, guys.
Yeah. I do a great sheep impression.
He does.
And camel.
And
Just
llama
to let you know. And llama.
impression.
Yeah. If you see me on the street, ask me.
Yeah.
And then the third one is called a tournée. And it's spelled Tourne, and the E has a little flick mark on it.
An emphasis mark.
Emphasis. It's French. I don't know what it's called.
Okay. An udarenia in Russian.
Yeah. And tournée are also called parrot beaks. The blade is hooked.
Oh, yes, I've seen those.
And it's got a very specific
Function? Okay, what does it do?
When you tournée vegetables, you can tournée potatoes, you can tournée carrots, and what that is doing is you're making 7 sides and sort of football shaped. It's a very French cuisine. It's very old school French. Nobody does it because it's just opulent.
Opulence.
It's obsolete cooking. You have to get 7 exact sides. 7.
7. Why 7?
The French.
The French.
Yeah. Don't ask me. It's hard to get, but once you get it, you can tournée potatoes, radishes, carrots, all these hearty vegetables. You can tournée it.
And they just look pretty.
Yeah.
It's just for looks then.
It's for looks.
Only.
And the parrot beak or the hooked, the curved blade helps you create that exact cut.
Oh.
So it's worthless.
So I want to point out that when Lee was going to culinary school, he came home with a bag of potatoes and he tornado a bunch of potatoes.
It was a tornado alley. Tornado alley.
Terrible. Terrible. Your dad jokes are terrible.
Hey, not quite 2 years. Dad jokes.
Okay, so don't get that knife.
No, it's worthless.
Don't get it. Okay, unless you're gonna, unless that's your specialty, is to tornado.
If you're French, I'm sorry, but it's worthless. All right, and on to the third category, slicing and carving. There is the serrated knife. Those are the bread knives that have
teeth.
Yeah, the teeth. Really nice for cutting bread.
I like a good serrated knife.
Yeah.
I feel like it does the trick. It's kind of a one-hit wonder, but it's a good wonder.
It's a great wonder. And also, if you need to go cut down a tree, take your serrated bread knife out.
That's a good point. I could take our little tree down.
You could take a tree. Nothing like a redwood, but. And then there is a slicer. Do you remember when I mentioned the utility knife?
Yes.
That was 4 to 7 inches, slender.
Mm-hmm.
The slicer knife is pretty much the same. It's a slender knife, but it's 10 to 12 inches.
So that would be good for, I'm just going to guess that it's maybe good for slicing raw meat. No?
Actually cooked meat.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because it's so long, you just get one nice fluid motion and you could slice through cooked ham, roasted chicken.
Okay.
So if you've gone to any of those like Brazil grill restaurants, the Brazilian grill
where they
restaurant,
have meat on a spit.
Meat on a spit. Just think of what those knives are that those guys bring around. And
That's
they're
a
like,
slicer.
hey, would you like some of the steak? And just one motion, cut it off. That's a slicer knife.
Okay.
And then the last knife.
I think everybody has slicer knives for Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Yeah. And you could get electrical serrated slicer knives.
Oh, okay.
Those are for lazy people.
Okay, sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh, no, don't worry. And the next one is a tomato knife. Think of a serrated knife with a fork on the end.
That's a tomato knife?
Yeah.
Why is that called a tomato knife?
Tomatoes are sort of hard to cut.
Yes.
So the serrated knife has more jagged teeth than just a regular bread knife.
Okay.
But it's got the fork on the end so that you could pick up the slices.
Oh, so
it's just 2 tines of a fork.
So I think my first initial reaction of having a teeth, like a saw-like tooth on tomato knife seems really dumb because it would rip up your tomato.
Well, they're finer. It's a finer teeth. Mm-hmm. And because the skin of the tomato is what really causes people problems.
Yeah.
Like once you get through the skin, cutting through the flesh of the tomato is easy.
Fine.
So the serrated knife portion of the tomato knife is ultra fine, just so that you could grip the skin.
Okay.
So.
And then it has a fork.
Then it's got a fork.
I don't think I would get that one either.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. If you've got a bread knife, you've got a pretty good tomato knife.
Because that just seems a little like superfluous to me.
That's a big word, dear. I'm an idiot. Superfluous. That's just like obsolete.
Yeah, it just extra.
Okay.
Yeah, just.
Yes, that word. All right. You educated girl.
Lee, you have big words too.
I got big words. I can spell bat. B-A-T.
Good
But
job.
I can't spell hippopotamus. All right. And then the fourth group are meat and fish.
Okay.
These are the boning knife,
Oh, yes.
the filleting knife, and a cleaver.
Okay. I think I know what a cleaver is.
Yeah.
I'm not totally sure. Oh, wait. I think I know what a boning knife is, but.
So boning knives and filleting knives sometimes are interchangeable. A boning knife is a flexible knife. You could actually bend the blade quite a bit.
Is that just so you can get in around bones and that type of thing?
Yeah.
Cut the meat off of bones and stuff?
Yeah, so like a butcher or a fishmonger,
Mm-hmm.
if they need to get the bones out of the meat, because it is a bendable blade, they can get the meat separated from the bone.
Right.
A filleting knife is even more flexible and a little bit skinnier. Both these knives, both the boning knife and the filleting knife, are really slender.
Okay.
They're not even half the size of the handle. So they're
Oh.
really thin, very slender, very flexible.
So the handle, you probably have a handle. The bolster's probably quite large.
Yeah.
But then it starts immediately tapers into a really thin blade.
Yeah.
Is that okay? I think I've seen that one too.
Yeah. And those are really fun if you're filleting fish, because you put the tip down and then you could bend the blade and slide it in between the meat of the fillet of the fish and the skin of the fish.
Oh.
And it's a nice, quick, swift slicing motion, and you don't have to worry about skin.
That's awesome.
So
I've never seen that done though, so
yeah.
And we don't fillet fish that often in our house.
Nope.
I don't think hardly at all.
Hardly. If we get salmon, we usually...
It's already done.
Well, I was going to say we always broil it with the skin on, too.
That's true.
And then we just flake the meat off.
That's true.
So
I think it keeps the moisture in.
I'm too lazy, so I like the skin. But yeah.
Okay.
And then the cleaver. So the cleaver is a heavy brute of a knife. There's the meat cleavers, and they get pretty heavy. It is pretty much just for chopping through bone with ease.
Which totally makes sense. I mean, to have such a heavy knife, you would want some of that weight behind your swing, I guess.
Yeah. And you Winter, have a cleaver that you've inherited from your late father.
Yep.
And it's a big, brutish, meat slinging, bone breaking
Cleaver.
cleaver.
Yeah, it's got nicks and stuff like that because that's all it's used for. Is we would always just cut chicken with it, bones and
Chicken right through the bones, no
Yep.
problem, probably.
Yep.
And sort of more modern are vegetable cleavers. They're not as heavy as a meat cleaver, but it's used for more of the heavy
like
vegetables.
gourds and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
gourds, potatoes, carrots, those things that you can chop through pretty nicely with a heavier knife.
Yeah,
I love my vegetable cleaver.
he does.
I use it as a chef's knife.
He does. So those are the main categories. Is that correct?
Well, I've got two more.
Oh,
Sorry, this is a long segment. So there's the seafood, and those are the clam knife,
yeah.
the oyster knife, and a deveiner.
Oh, for shrimp?
Yeah, for shrimp.
Okay.
So the clam and the oyster, they might look pretty similar, but the way you access clams and the way you access oysters are two different ways, and it shows in the knife. So a clam knife, you use the knife from the front and you shove it in to the clam and you pry the clam apart.
You twist the knife.
You twist the knife and it breaks the seal, and then you can open the clam.
Okay.
So it's a thinner knife, and it's a little bit sharper.
Well, and I was about to say, aren't those knives, okay, so the handle is a little...
It's big, and it's got a big guard on it. A big handle, big guard.
Yeah, but what's the shape of the knife? Isn't it basically...
It's a short...
Stubby knife, right?
Not too stubby. It's short and sort of thin.
Okay.
Whereas the oyster, you have a big sturdy handle, a big guard, and you have a broad, short, stubby knife. So the oyster, to access an oyster, you enter from the rear. You break the clam from the front, you break the oyster from the rear.
Oh, from where it hinges.
Uh-huh.
From the hinge.
Uh-huh. You're breaking the hinge.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And so you shove it in the back, and then it's a twisting motion. And
because you're cutting through more things, you're basically cutting on the oyster versus the clam, which is more prying.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
So clam knives, oyster knives, you guys mentioned unitaskers.
Yes.
Those are unitaskers.
Yes, they are. We don't open clams or oysters here
No.
very often. So we do not own. Well, I don't own one.
I
You
do.
have one, don't you?
Yeah, I've got an oyster
Knife. Well, that was from school.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you have a deveiner. And this is the ultimate example of a unitasker. You have the shrimp, and you take this knife, and it's a very thin, it tapers to almost nothing. It's a very thin, very small knife, and it's for scooping poop out of dead shrimp. That's the only thing it does.
Unitasker.
So, yeah.
But
Unitasker.
if you did a lot of shrimp, like if you had a lot of raw shrimp that hasn't been deveined, deshelled, detailed.
What's the detail in the detailer?
Yep. That would be maybe a good thing to have. I don't know. No. Lee's shaking his head.
I was going to say, if you're eating a lot of shrimp and you have to do it yourself, you might just want to buy it from the grocery store and they'll do it for you.
They will. It's pretty nice.
Yeah. But that's us living in Utah.
Yes. We don't have a lot of good fresh seafood.
No fresh shrimp.
Maybe there are people out there that use the deveiner more than we do. So we'd love to hear from you.
All right. And then the last category, the professional knives. So there's three knives, I'm sorry. There's the scimitar, there's the butcher's knife, and then there's the frozen food saw. So yeah. Let me guess what that one means.
Yes, I was like, oh, okay.
So the scimitar pretty much looks like a scimitar sword, but in a knife form. It's got a nice long blade that the whole blade swoops up to a point.
Yeah.
So the handle, the blade, and the swooping blade to a point. And those are used for butchering like big cattles, stuff like that.
Oh.
Like the scimitar, because it's got a nice sharp point, you can stick it in and cut. It's a nice heavy-duty professional blade.
So it's not flexible at all. Is that right? Generally?
Very little flexibility to the blade.
Whoa, okay.
Yeah. The butcher's knife is very similar to the scimitar, but instead of a nice point, it's got a rounded blade at the end.
Okay.
So instead of the
point on
sweeping point, it sweeps into a rounded point.
Is there any particular reason why that one's rounded?
Getting in like crevices of half a lamb, half a bull as you're butchering up animals. I don't know. As I was reading about it, a lot of butchers use scimitars and a lot of butchers use butcher's knives.
Okay, so...
And it's just preference, I'm thinking.
Okay. Because I'm looking like, what?
Yeah, so watching videos, they both are cool knives. You know, you could do a whole lot of damage to a half a rack of lamb with a butcher's knife or a scimitar. And then the last professional knife is the frozen food saw.
Oh, that sounds terrible.
Yeah. Pretty much think of a saw and put it in a knife form. It's for cutting up
frozen food. Anything that's just been stuck in the freezer too long.
If you've ever seen the movie Rocky, when he's in the meat freezer and he's punching the sides of beef, they would use a frozen food saw to cut stuff off of
Really?
that. Yeah.
I guess that makes sense. It is probably frozen stuff. So.
Yeah.
Ugh.
All right. That's all that I've got, Winter. Any questions?
Okay, so out of all of those knives, because they're, like I said, you know, sometimes when you acquire a knife and you are going to drop $100 on a knife, let's say if I'm going to buy a block what should I get? Or like get a block's worth. Does that make sense? If I'm going to acquire like
So, like,
3 to 5 good knives,
Okay.
what should I own in my arsenal of knives?
So personally, I have 3 chef's knives. 3 chef's knives.
Knives.
Chef's knives. I've got 1 Santoku chef's knife. It's a smaller one. I've got 2 serrated bread knives, and I've got a vegetable cleaver, and 1 paring knife.
Okay, so but you need to tell me which ones I'm going to get. If I'm going to get 5 knives or even 3 knives.
I would say I personally would recommend 1 chef's knife, and that would be your knife to go to. If you need to cut vegetables, get a chef's knife, and that includes the Santoku chef knife.
The
Santoku chef's knife, and that's sort of a different shape of the blade, but it's the same purpose. I would get a nice, serrated knife, like a bread knife, and I would get, I don't know, like a utility knife. I personally never use the utility because my chef knife does for me. That I know it sounds terrible. I'm sorry. Chef's knife, chef's.
It's really hard to say.
Yeah.
There's a lot of F's there.
F's and S's.
Knives.
F's and. So yeah, I would say those 3: chef, serrated, and a utility.
Okay. I think that I pretty much only use the Santoku knife that we have.
Yeah.
Really? Okay. And the serrated. Because if we have a good crusty loaf of bread, those are the 2 knives I've used. And that's it.
And that's pretty much all that you need.
Everything else I can do. I think all of the tasks I need to do, I can do with those 2 knives.
Yeah. Like if you do delicate work, a paring knife is good. But who really does turn up roses?
Why not, Lee?
Because I can't. I've got sausage fingers.
Well, let me tell you when I found out something I think that you might like about actually considering the Santoku knife.
All right.
So that's a Japanese blade. Because I didn't know anything. I didn't really understand the difference between Japanese and German blades because there are definitely other types of knives, but there's 2 kind of big categories. The German type blades, the European blade versus the Japanese blade or kind of an Asian blade, right?
Okay.
So these are the general things that make them different. So the German blade is a little bit bigger angle. And when I talk about angle, if you look down a knife just straight on and you cut it in half, the angle that it's at is 20 degrees. And so if you take both of them symmetrically, then it's going to be 40 degrees for a German knife or a European knife.
So when you say this, you say sort of look at a house, like a 4-year-old draws a house. It has the rectangle, and it's got the pointed roof. That pointed roof is 20 degree angle.
20 degree. So one side of the roof is a 20 degree.
So,
but when you put both of them together, it's going to be total of 40 degrees.
40 degrees. Okay.
So that's about that's generally the German angle.
All right. So
now if you think about it, you're like, gosh, that doesn't seem very sharp. And you would sort of be right. Because when you look at the Asian knife or the Japanese knife, if you do the exact same thing, if you're looking at a knife directly, like if somebody was pointing a knife right at you and just look down it, that is about a 15 degree angle for one side. So a total of 30 degrees for both sides of the blade.
Okay, so the European, the German, it's not as pointy.
It's not as pointy
because it's both sides are angled 20 degrees.
Yep.
Whereas the Japanese blade is a longer blade because it's both sides are angled at 15.
Yep. So it's much narrower. And I think you knew this, Lee, but I did not know this until I started researching a little bit more. And the other thing that is interesting that kind of divides these 2 types of blades is that the European blades are considered a softer metal. They use a combination of metals that makes it softer, but it's more durable. It's a little bit hardier. While the Japanese ones, they use a harder material combination, but it makes it a more brittle knife.
Okay.
So I would say, like, so for example, I'm going to tell you this, like, I bought this I was so excited, you guys. I was so excited. I researched this knife. Like, I looked everything up and I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be the best knife ever. There were such good reviews on it and it was like super sharp, and it is a Mac knife, MAC, and it is a beautiful, beautiful knife.
It really is a beautiful knife.
It's a beautiful knife. And so I gave it to Lee. I was so excited. And he's like, wow, this is a beautiful knife. However, first of all, it's a little too light for your hand, if I'm not mistaken.
It's a very light knife.
Yeah. And so Lee he always talks about having big sausage fingers, but he also has really large hands. So for him to hold that knife, it felt like a little plastic knife to him.
It was cutting with a feather.
Yeah, it was a little too light for him. But the other thing about it was that it was too sharp. I mean, that sounds really silly to say, but Lee would complain about how sharp it was. And I was like, I don't understand what you're saying. Like, what do you mean by when you say it's too sharp?
Because the thing, having a sharp knife is awesome until it's too sharp and it starts to cut into the cutting board.
And gets stuck there.
And as you're doing the rocking motion, if you're cutting whatever you're cutting and it gets stuck in the cutting board and you're trying to pry it up and it takes a little bit more effort, that's a problem. It's such a beautiful knife. It was so sharp, but for an everyday chef's knife, I wouldn't be able to use it.
Just because it would take so long to do the motions that you need to be quick.
But
and the
one thing, if I was a sushi roller, like a sushi chef, it would have been awesome because you're not using that to chop up vegetables. You're using it to slice delicate sushi.
Precision. It's like precision work.
Yeah.
So the other thing I wanted to point out was that Lee dropped that knife one time. I am not exactly sure, but he accidentally dropped it and he picked it up and there was a huge chunk of the metal gone.
Yeah.
Completely gone.
If you look at the blade, it's
visible.
Like, it's visible. It's barely any. It's like a fraction of a millimeter, but you can see exactly where it chipped out.
Yeah, and it's because that the metals that they use in a lot of these Asian blades are a little bit more, they're more fragile or brittle.
Brittle.
And so that's kind of the things that you'll have. So, and why are the German ones a little bit more sturdy? It's because some of it is not precision work. They're using it in everyday cooking. The interesting thing also is that a lot of times those German knives have that swooping design so that you can get the rocking motion. You know how they talk about the rocking motion when you're cutting vegetables, so you can do it quickly. A lot of Japanese blades or Asian blades, the traditional ones, do not have that the swooping.
It's a little
design.
more flat.
It's more flat, and so you can't get that. So that's one thing I loved about this history was the Santoku knife is actually a hybrid of 3 traditional Japanese knives. And the kind of the rough translation of Santoku is it means 3 uses or 3 virtues. And so it's a combination of, let's see, it's the use. I gotta get the names right. Yusuba, and that's a vegetable. Basically a vegetable cleaver, a deba or a deba, that's a triangular blade that's used for fish or poultry, and then the unagi knife, which is also a long, extra long blade that is used for sashimi and cutting through raw meat and that type of thing. So you use the Santoku knife. That's it has a little bit more. It's not flat edged. It's a little bit more swooping. Slight swoop. It's not as much as a regular, like a traditional German blade, for example, but you definitely have a little bit more of that. And it's, I think a lot of households are starting to move towards the Santoku because it has a little bit of both of the German and the Asian influence. So
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of interesting.
One thing I was thinking of when you were talking about the Japanese blade versus the German blade, just think of the diets. I'm not Japanese. I don't know exactly what the Japanese diet is, but compared to a European diet, the Asian diet seems a little bit more light and delicate. You know, they're not
Eating
a whole
bratwurst.
lot of bratwursts and root vegetables and stews and stuff. They're eating more seafood. They're eating more rice. They're eating more delicate, and so they don't need a brute
Yes.
knife. They can use a soft knife. Whereas in European diet, if they had these soft knives, it would be shot in one mill. Yeah.
That was an interesting discussion about knives and just kind of the anatomy of a knife. I think the key, though, when it comes to choosing a knife for yourself is it needs to fit you.
You know, you could have anybody tell you what knife they personally like.
Yeah.
But until you've actually gone to, and I recommend going to a store that sells knives and put it in your hand. Feel it. If it's too heavy, it's going to be a burden to use it. If it's too light, it's going to feel weird. If it's too long, if it's too short, go to a knife shop, go to a specialty cooking store, and feel the knives in your hand, and find it online and buy it cheaper.
Well, and also a lot of these stores will have vegetables available for you to chop up,
Yeah.
so you can feel how it actually works in your hand. So do that, and there's many ways to obtain a knife at a good cost, whether it's online or getting a discount on a certain day. So,
Little story: Winter went to a class at a store, and she saw a knife for sale.
And then they had another 20%
Yeah, they
off.
had another 20%
So
off.
I got this $120 knife for $64. So you guys, there's ways to get a really good knife by just looking around. So it's worth it when you have a good knife in your tool chest, I guess.
Yeah. And she called me up and was like, "Hey, is this a good knife?" And I looked it up online, and she bought it for about $15 cheaper than what I could have found online.
Yeah. So there's a lot of options that you can do. So
yeah.
good talk, Lee. Good talk.
Good talk, Winter. Let's have a food fight.
Food fight, food fight, food fight, food fight. It's winter.
This is the segment where you can email us with your relationship questions related to food. You can email us at hungrysquared@gmail.com.
Disclaimer, we are in no way professional relationship experts, but you should totally listen to us anyway. If you need professional help, please seek it out.
Fight segment of the show. Here we go.
Okay, Lee. Where's
All
our question from? Lee gets to read the question this week.
All right. Winter passed this over, so I'm reading it. And it goes like this. My good friends of the pod, Hungry Squared Pod, to be exact. I find myself in a predicament. Every time I get onto Facebook, I have to slog through video after video of how to make such and such in 15 minutes posts. I am about to punch something or someone. What should I do? Sincerely, about to join the Amish.
The Amish?
Yeah, well, they have no technology. There is no Facebook with the Amish.
Oh, that's a good point.
They do have those fires that run on electricity, but they don't have the Facebook.
So I think I can relate to this person because those types of posts on Facebook drive me crazy too.
Yeah, and we're foodie people. We've thumbed up a couple things, so it seems to be if you've thumbed up one, they want you to thumb up 50,000.
Well, and they just start showing up in your feed. That's the algorithm I think that Facebook's doing right now. So I think we can also relate this to, right now we are in the midst of the political season too. So it's kind of the same deal, right? It's like, what do you do when you're like, stop posting that? I don't want to see that. What would you do, Lee?
I'm I use Facebook for very few things. I just got back onto Facebook because of a music monthly club, and now
A manly music monthly club.
Manly music. But I forgot how to turn off notifications and stuff like that. So I was slogging through a bunch of videos. But if you look up in the corner, they have a drop-down menu of the advertising, and you can select show me less.
Oh yeah,
ads
they do,
like
don't
that.
they?
And it sort of helps. Like, I still get a whole lot of videos, but I don't see a whole lot of them. Unlike this person, I don't want to join the Amish. I don't want a neck beard. I've got a full beard.
I think turning off notifications is good, but I also think my personal opinion though is that I think a lot of people are sick of those. So they're not. I'll be honest, they are not showing up in my feed as often.
Oh yeah,
yeah, because I think people are sick and tired of it. So I'm glad that people aren't saving and sharing.
Good job,
those
society.
as much. Maybe it's my friends that are cooler.
Yeah, well, you got cool friends.
Yeah, I do.
Nothing to say bad about my friends, but you suck. One more thing is you can stop following a person if there is like a repeat criminal. Like, all they post are the 15-minute make a meal in 15-minute crockpot wonder videos.
The hands videos.
The hands.
Those drive me crazy.
The tiny hands.
Yeah.
You can unfollow that person. You'll still be friends, but you won't see any of their posts.
Which sometimes is nice. And once again, you can do that for the political season too.
Yeah. But that's done in November.
Yeah. And you can go back and follow them if you really want to when you're like, okay, we're friends again. Or like you're
or you'll forget who you've unfollowed.
That's a good point. And it is what it is. So I think that's a good plan. Don't unfriend somebody just because of that they have preferences for watching food videos.
Unfriend them.
No.
You don't need friends who like food.
No.
Food sucks.
I don't know if Lee is suited for this portion of the podcast.
True. I'm a crotchety old man. Remember that? Yeah.
Okay, well.
It's simple. Either just keep slogging through the videos, and like Winter's friends, they'll start to die out.
Yeah.
Not that the people are dying, but the videos will start to die out.
Yeah.
Or figure out how to see less ads by clicking on the drop down menu.
Yeah, out the top right. I think that's a good idea. I think that's actually the best option. You don't want to unfriend people, just turn off the notifications. I think that's good, Lee.
Thanks. I try to solve stuff.
Well, thanks for joining us today for our show. You guys, you can find us on hungrysquare.com, and you can subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Music. And please follow us on Instagram, you guys. We are doing all sorts of fun stuff there at Hungry Squared if you jump on over to Instagram. So it's always a party.
What? Who's got a party?
We got a party. So.
We got a party.
Well, thanks for joining us this week for Food Nerdery, and we'll see you next week.
All right. Well, I won't see you next week.
Well, you never know. Lee might be back. Thanks for coming on, Lee.
Hey,
that was
welcome.
a lot of fun.
It was fun. Thanks, guys.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Hungry squared, yeah, hungry squared.